A good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. It is now Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. On today's update, Debby still hanging around, slow moving, going to continue to be a flood threat. Luckily, it has not been, at least for North Carolina, just yet anyway, and hopefully it won't be, has not been a big flood producer, but there's still time on the clock for that to happen. We were certainly concerned about it. It had the setup to potentially be another one of these historic events, but dry air has been entrained into the system. It lost all of its central convection, and it really doesn't look very impressive on satellite. That being said, it's still a tropical storm. It does have some subtropical characteristics, but remember, I say this often, those are just labels that us human beings slap on something like this to, I guess, have better order amongst our busy lives and whatnot. It's still a formidable system. We've had tornadoes from it. I'm going to show you some video from that from the National Weather Service. Wilmington, someone sent them a clip. It's been a busy day here at the HurricaneTrack headquarters in Wilmington, North Carolina. A lot going on, so let's get to it. First of all, right here, and that's what the thumbnail was based on. It is interesting over time, and this is going to lead to where we're going in today's update, that there has been this notable, and as John says here, a remarkable westward trend in the forecast track of Debby and what will eventually be the remnants. It's about to make landfall again through the weekend. And the most recent data suggests that that low pressure area and all that moisture is going to track through central Pennsylvania and Vermont after initially being projected to remain offshore. So this is going to be more inland. And so our friends up here in the interior Northeast, New England, and vicinity, you could have the potential for some very heavy rain. And with that terrain up there, the mountains and the valleys and the streams, creeks, and rivers that have had a lot of rain over the last several months, this could be very problematic. So that's why I incorporated that into today's thumbnail. So let's take a look back at Debby's past real quick. I think this is interesting. I like watching sea surface temperature trends. We know that hurricanes remove heat and distribute it around, and it's a very interesting process. And all that 31 degrees Celsius isotherm area, I talked about this yesterday, been severely eroded here in the eastern Gulf. But maybe more remarkable than that, two things here. First, also mentioned this yesterday, but I want to re-emphasize it. Look at that large area of 32 Celsius, and this is not a high-resolution satellite sea surface temperature product, but if you were to look at one of the higher-res versions of this, there's lots of shallow water in here that's close to 33 Celsius. I mean, we're knocking on the door of 90 and 91 degrees Fahrenheit. But here's what I want to really hone in on. The 30-degree gradient, the isotherm, whichever way you want to look at it, 30 Celsius. So remember, everything in science is basically metric, right? So 30 Celsius sitting right in here somewhere. So really, basically green, everything to the right of green into the red. The Gulf of Mexico still, even with Debby's interaction with the eastern Gulf over here, kind of churning everything up, we are still sitting at a majority of the Gulf, a vast majority, I mean almost 100% of it here, at 30 Celsius plus. And it is only August the 7th. So Debby took some heat off the top, so to speak, like blown across the top of a cup of hot coffee. But there's still plenty of warm water. So I don't want people to let their guard down. Hopefully they are not. On the Atlantic side of things, really haven't seen much change here in the sea surface temperature pattern off the southeast coast. But it will be interesting in the days to come to see how this changes. Debby not very windy, and it's not very concentrated. It's kind of a broad area of low pressure and rain bands and so forth. I'll show you that on satellite in a moment. But this will have a little bit of an impact on the southeastern coastal sea surface temperatures. And as it drags its way up into the northeast up here, that southerly wind around it could help to push some of these sea surface temperatures that are warm, maybe a little bit farther to the north. We'll have to watch and see how that plays out. All right, satellite animation. Kind of hollowed out there. Not much deep convection around the central area of lowest pressure at all. But the rain bands are still quite prolific with it. It's kind of spread out. The energy is dispersed over a pretty large area. Definitely we do have some dry air that is mixed into this system. And I want to show you this because it's really easy to see on the water vapor here. Dry air entrained into it, not much deep convection at all. Look at all that dryness right in here. So no central deep convection. It's more spread out. That being the case, though, we are seeing these bands rotate on, and we now have literally as I started this update, this just popped up, a new tornado watch in effect for northeast South Carolina and southeast North Carolina. As these bands rotate around, I'm going to put this into motion here, our radar scope, off the desktop here at the HurricaneTrack office in Wilmington, North Carolina. Look at that. So these bands, that's the problem. These bands rotate on, and they can produce brief but fairly substantial tornadoes. You're not going to get those big ones like you see out on the Great Plains. At least we certainly hope not. This is not that kind of environment. But tornadoes, nonetheless, can be a problem. And to prove it, here's one that is not too far from where I am. In fact, when the parent storm that created this passed through, it was really close to me, only 2 or 3 miles away at the most. And luckily, it was moving away from my location here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Someone sent this in to the folks at the National Weather Service, and of course, they posted it on social media here. Looking at the overall threat, and this is kind of dated now. Now we know that we do have that tornado watch, but the threat and the tornado threat increasing. Now there is a tornado watch for eastern North Carolina, parts of northeast South Carolina. Please be mindful of that. All right? So the flood threat going forward, this is over the next 3 days, and this is a composite of everything right through here. Highest down here where I am. So yes, there is the high potential here, the high risk of substantial flooding. But then the moderate up here, this is a few days away. Some of this could get upgraded to high. You got your mountains up here, more terrain, more elevation, more gravity involved, and that could lead to some dangerous flash flooding conditions. Sadly, you're no strangers to that up in this area in recent years. Here we go again, so please, please, please be careful out there. I do mean that from the bottom of my proverbial heart, as they say, right? Very, very careful. Please pay attention. Get your phone ready for weather-activated alerts or whatever the case may be. If you got a NOAA weather radio, just be aware, because when you go to bed and these things roll in, these very heavy bands of torrential rain, you don't want to be caught unaware. And the culprit here, this is the eastern U.S. shot from the GFS today. There's the East Coast right there. And all that energy, that red and orange that you see down here, that is Debby. And all that vorticity, not concentrated very much, it's over a large area. But that's problematic, because that huge bullseye of energy is going to make its way up into the northeast, the eastern side of the Appalachians, through the D.C. area, eastern Pennsylvania. The energy gets stretched out, involved with a front, and then all that darkness that you see in there where this vorticity gets even more concentrated. No, it's not bundled in a circular fashion like a tropical cyclone would do, but I look at that and I think, man, I bet it is raining very hard in there. Something's helping to create some forcing, and you could get some very high rain rates. So going back to this, please take it very seriously. This goes through Saturday. So into the weekend, you're going hiking up there in the mountains of upstate New York, in Vermont, New Hampshire. Please, please, please be very, very mindful. Be aware. Got to keep you alive, or you can't watch these videos, right? The flood threat, I do want to refresh this to make sure it's the most current. Not quite as bad as we were looking at. Some of these gauges and the forecasts for them coming down now, which is good news to see. We have had a time of it over the recent 6 years or so, going back even more than that now, really 8 years, back to Matthew in 2016 across eastern North Carolina. It's still only early August. We got a lot of hurricane season left in front of us. But yes, some of these streams and creeks and these rural areas could flood, and you could have farmland and low areas adjacent to the river roads and whatnot that could flood. So just keep that in mind overall, too, as well. All right? Looking ahead as we get deeper into the month of August here, I'm going to do the GFS out to 10 days for you. This is the 12Z run. And first of all, let's just take a look at what's what. There would be the remnants of Debby. This is the coast of Africa with a little bit of a monsoon trough sitting out here, and a fairly favorable pattern overall. So let's see, does anything happen over the next 10 days? Well, Debby's remnants get stretched out and pulled up into the northeast. We already talked about that. Next area you start watching is right here, a piece of energy coming off the coast of Africa. That will move its way westward, and the GFS anyway suggests that and another piece of energy, which is sitting right here, it's kind of innocuous, but it's there. This is a little over 5 days. We'll just call it 5 days out. GFS suggests that that one gets into the greater Antilles and then tries to develop. We're almost to 10 days. There we go. So we'll see the pattern. This is August 17th. We're getting closer and closer to that sort of magical time in the tropics where we say that the bell rings. That's a coined phrase from Dr. Bill Gray, the late great Dr. Bill Gray from Colorado State University, that usually around the last third of August, the Atlantic hurricane season wakes up into what we call the real hurricane season. It's just the meteorological, climatological peak time, and the GFS starting to get a little bit more active on the operational and the ensembles. And the Euro is basically the same thing. We'll take a look at that now. This is the 12Z run as well, and this is every 24 hours, but you can see the Euro also trying to develop some energy out there and parks it in the southwest Atlantic between Bermuda, which is right here somewhere. There's Bermuda and Cape Hatteras, maybe around day 10. Bottom line, it's hurricane season. You should be paying attention regardless, and we're going to have more and more activity going forward. None of this is a surprise. Now we have to do our part to be ready. A huge thank you again to everybody that has ordered the paper tracking map that I created many, many years ago, a couple decades now. And if you want one, I still have some available. $20 plus $3 for shipping and handling or something like that. I mean, you see me with the sense of scale there. I'll show you how big it is. An original piece of artwork, the old school way of tracking hurricanes on a paper map. You just get a Sharpie or something. Sharpies work best, and you can plot these. We're only up through 4 named storms so far, and you can get all of the archival plots for those if you want to catch up. This makes a great classroom activity with school getting ready to start. You might want to give one as a gift to a weather geek, hurricane aficionado, anybody, doesn't matter. They've been ordered from the UK all across even the northern United States and everywhere in between. And again, a huge thank you to everybody that ordered one. It really makes me happy to know that you appreciate the old school way of tracking hurricanes, and you literally own a piece of my digital artwork there in printed format after creating that way back at the first start of my career in the late 90s. That's how I started. I was doing hurricane tracking charts and a lot of public awareness products, won a couple of awards. Where is that thing hiding? I got it in here somewhere. Oh, there it is. It's out of the frame a little bit, maybe. That crystal pyramid from FEMA. Anyway, I'm rambling on. The early part of my career was maps and public awareness campaigns. Now with social media, just like you're consuming this video on through YouTube and Patreon, we can reach a lot more people than those early days. All right? Anyway, let's get this online for you. As always, thank you for tuning in from all of us at the Hurricane Track family. Good to have you watching. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.